Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Chris. I just sat down to record a little video for everybody about some important concepts that we didn't get a chance to cover yet in the first few classes. And we would consider this to be a foundational lecture or maybe a whiteboard lesson that we would want to lead students through in order to establish some basic language, a language system for all the stuff that we're going to end up talking about regarding design thinking, and especially language that we want students to use and concepts that we want students to use when they're doing writing during the design process. And so we've already established a bunch of this stuff in the beginning of class, some definitions and such. But let's take a look up top here. So I'm calling this the nature of technology and technology and society. A taxonomy or a language system. And in this taxonomy, we're going to cover some of these bullet points, some definitions and concepts, some we've heard before and a few new ones. We're going to talk about the natural world versus the human design world. We're going to break society down into some layers and talk about the impact of a given technology on society. We're going to relate to the inputs of technology, what the 7 things are that it could take to produce any technology. And what are the 4 outcomes of a technological solution? We've talked about benefits and trade-offs, but we're going to break that down even further into 4 outcomes. And the last one is a little piece called the J-curve of tech, and about how technology increases at an exponential rate. And so in order to do this, I'm going to take a single piece of technology. We're going to use the cell phone as the example that we're going to analyze here. And the idea would be that you or students could take any technology hereafter and talk about it in these terms. And we're also going to brush upon a product's life cycle in order to extract some of these terms. And this is not the design loop, but we're going to talk about the life cycle of a product as well. And as I do this, I'm going to draw some images. And this is just my method that I've used over the years to help codify all these terms and definitions and concepts under one umbrella. So let's start with our tech that we're going to use today. And the tech's going to be a cell phone, something easy that everybody can relate to. And so in this model, we've got a person here who is the consumer. They also produce data, a prosumer. And this person has a cell phone in their hand. All right. We're going to talk about the life of the cell phone. So if I was in class, I'd be asking students, hey, can you tell me some places along the way? I know that at some point you're going to take this cell phone, you're going to buy it from a store or online. And at that particular place on the product life cycle, we might call this retail. And there's some storefront or virtual place that people go to buy their stuff. But let's talk about the technology first of a cell phone. It's a technology, so that's something we hold in our hand like a phone, or it's something digital. If somebody creates a product or a system would be like a way of doing things. If somebody creates a product or a system, they do it because they have a need or a want. They have a problem in their life, a situation that they want to change. So what's the big problem that exists for creating a cell phone? And people will say, well, we want to be able to talk back and forth to each other. We already do that now. Okay, well, we want to be able to talk to each other at a distance. But I can scream and yell. I can make smoke signals. Well, what if I want to talk really far away? Well, I have a walkie-talkie for that. You walkie and you talkie. But even at that point, the walkie-talkie, eventually those signals, because they're going from one walkie-talkie to the next, they're going to hit geography and landforms along the way. They're going to stop the communication. But the need for human communication has always existed. The technologies we've created to help us do that continue to change. And some of them are new inventions, which are products that never existed before. and others are innovations, which are improvements to those technologies. We've established those definitions in the past already, but this will lead me over here to my 7 areas of technology. I'm going to start on the left. We're 7 areas of the human design world. And we could say that underneath all of these different areas of the human design world, in these categories, any human problem can fit into one of these categories. So these were established a long time ago by the Standards for Technological Literacy back in the year 2000. And they established 7 of them. We'll list a few of them out here. Communication might be the area of focus for a cell phone. Communication, they'll say communication/information. That could be anything from a billboard, right, to a satellite. Computer programming languages, to writing things out with a pencil. We've got communication information. That's one big area. Might as well list these out now. Another one might be transportation, which would be moving people or goods from one place to another. And by the way, we're going to find most of these concepts in Standard 8.2 for New Jersey's student learning standards. So communication is moving information from one place to another. Transportation is moving people or goods from one place to another. Another one of these might be construction. Construction is when we produce something and it stays on site, whether it's a doghouse or a new casino. These are structures that get built and stay in one site. How about when we build things, especially when we make them in mass and then they get sent out elsewhere, kind of like a cell phone? Those would be examples of manufacturing technologies. Manufacturing. And then we've got power and energy. I guess a cell phone is a nice universal example that includes many of these technologies. Power and energy. And if you look at different design challenges in the technology and engineering or tech education, maker education world, it's easy to classify a bunch of the different design challenges you might see into these different activities. If people are building a bridge or a tower to hold the most weight, that's construction. If they're using CAD and they're drawing things in 3D on the screen for a product that's going to be 3D printed or mass produced, or manufacturing. When people are doing stuff with solar panels and rockets, it's power and energy. Rockets themselves could be something for transportation. And then the last area, the 6th one here, actually breaks into 2 categories, and this is biotechnology. And when we think of biotechnology in the classroom, a lot of times it has to do with hydroponics. This would be mixing living things, bio, with human design things, technology. And in this biotech, we could break this into 2 categories. If you look up the word biotech online on Wikipedia, recombinant DNA is one of the biggest things you're going to see there. So, but we're going to put this into 2 things: agriculture, and medical. So if we see a prosthetics design challenge, that might be a medical piece of biotechnology. All right, so these are our 7 areas of the design world, but right now we're thinking about the cell phone. And I'll be asking students, hey, I'm going to make a little list over here of benefits and trade-offs of a cell phone, or pluses and minuses. And students may have already done something like what to do with a sock. Maybe they've done the phone stand already. And so they're well aware that any product out there will have simultaneously things that are good about it and things that are not so good about it. But we have to remember, those are in the eye of the beholder. Those are subjective, even though we may all agree on them in one category or another. And so this need for instant communication, I guess a benefit of a cell phone would be just that. We get some instant communication, and in this benefits and trade-offs, typically kids are starting to think about the impact on the person, the user, the first person user. But we'll see other things come about. Kids will say it costs a lot of money to buy a cell phone. So big cost. That might be a downside in the beginning. What are some other things with a cell phone? By the way, this cell phone list would go on and on. A cell phone, it's really crazy to just call it a phone. It does way more than just talking to each other. I just noticed I've got offers for 10G, all this new bandwidth that are available. And I'm telling you, it's not just so that I could stream 2 movies at one time. That's because every single app on my phone is collecting all kinds of data from me, haptic data, the way my chest moves up and down when I breathe, how many times I blink, the facial expressions I make, my location, the other technological devices that are around me in the network. All that stuff's being captured by different sensors inside the phone, as well as little infrared cameras inside here. But anyway, kids will mention things about how the cell phone could be bad for your eyes. That could be a negative. There could be health impacts that are no good for the person looking at the phone after dark. Young kids have trouble falling asleep or even going into deep REM sleep at night because they're concerned about what the next post is going to be online or something that they're missing, that fear of missing out. Messing up people's circadian rhythm with the light that comes off the phone. I mean, this could go on and on and on. And I do want to tease that out with students, but for the sake of this whole lesson here today, I'm going to just abbreviate some of this. We get benefits like instant communication. We get benefits like entertainment. We get benefits for organization. And people will say, well, if you use the phone too much and rely on these things, your GPS, well, then if you become reliant, then you're not using parts of your own brain to do these things. And so there could be a trade-off that way where maybe we lose as kids grow up, or even for adults, we start to lose some of our abilities for social interaction. We'll suffer, but hey, then again, on the other side of this device, I'm linked to all the information that at least is published out there that we're allowed to see is just on the other side of this black mirror. So there's all kinds of information here. Maybe that information overload could be a bad thing, but kids will start to see that these things could swap back and forth into either category for benefits and trade-offs. I mean, just the health stuff, it goes on and on. If you were to break the phone open inside, all these electronics are soaked in brominated flame retardants so that they don't catch on fire if the battery were to overheat. The fact that you can't take the battery out so the phone can always be tracked no matter what's going on, even when it's off. There's just a litany of things here. And the point is that every technology is going to be full of good stuff and bad stuff. It's how is it used, like the Prometheus in the fire, So we've established that. We've established the definition for a technology versus the natural world, the world that was already here, nature, things that are out there. We've got these 7 different areas of the human design world. Now let's go back into our product life cycle and start thinking about different stops that happen along the way. This isn't a globe. This is just kind of a loop for when we want to produce the cell phone. And I'll say, well, what's this cell phone made of? And students will say it's made of glass. It's got some plastic parts and some metal parts. And we'll say, well, yeah, where does that happen? It definitely happens before retail. The phone's being built somewhere. And there's probably some step in here called extraction. Extraction, let's put that one here. Extraction, this is where things are pulled out of the earth that might be used to manufacture something. And I'll draw some little graphics here, some mountains full of rare earth minerals. It's not that they're that rare, it's just that we got to get down into the earth to extract them, mining and stuff. Maybe I'll draw a little lake with some fish inside there. So we got to go into nature to extract these things. Once they're extracted, where do they go? That's right. In this supply chain here, these minerals and materials that are extracted, like the glass is going to come from silica and from sand, and that transformation of those materials is going to take place probably up here in manufacturing. So I'll draw a cliche smokestack of a manufacturing plant somewhere. I'll put a big M here for manufacturing. And by the way, where are the iPhones manufactured? These things are manufactured in Asia, So these minerals move from here out to this manufacturing process. And when this is occurring, there's other stuff that it takes for this to happen, no matter what product it is or what the stops are along the way. For example, there's always going to be people working here, and there's going to be people working here, and there's people using the phone. And this is called these are called the inputs of technology. So I'm going to write these up here at the top. We're going to call these the 7 inputs. And these correlate directly to the constraints that you might have on a design brief for a design challenge that you give to students, where we say, hey, you have the requirements, what the technology has to be able to do later that we can test to see if it solves the problem. But the inputs are the 7 categories of things that could be utilized, that will be necessary to produce a technology. So we know one of those is going to be people. Can you guess what some of the other ones are? That's right, capital or money. We know that materials are going to be something. We know that, so 1, 2, 3. We know that tools and machines are going to be necessary to process these materials. Tools/machines. And this begs a definition here. What's the difference between a tool and a machine? Well, a tool is something that extends the human capability from our body. And so you could think of if I was getting my hair cut, this isn't what I used to have my hair cut, but a pair of scissors, that's a tool. I operate this, right? But if I have some hair clippers that plug into the wall and use another source of power, that's going to be a machine. So a tool is just a tool that uses another source of power besides the person is a machine. Another one here is going to be energy. And it's not like every design challenge has a constraint for all 7 of these, but most of these will show up on the design brief more than likely. Right? We're limiting kids to what types of materials they can use, how many students they can work with. Another one here would be knowledge and information. So we'll put KNO, knowledge and information. What do we have access to that we already know, what we can learn in order to produce this? And the last one would be time and space. Space being a function of time and space. And we know that too, right? If we limit kids to say, you have 3 hours to complete this design challenge or 1 month. All right, so the 7 inputs of technology are a major concept. We want students to use this vocabulary, and we know that these will show up on the design brief itself, right? The benefits and trade-offs, the trade-offs are the new problems that any technology creates. So every technology we create is supposed to solve a problem, satisfy a need or want, but it's also going to create new problems. That's why that design process always ends in redesign and starts over again. Some little tidbits here. A lot of these phones, I said, are manufactured in Asia. Taxes are different over there. Labor laws are different over there. Maybe there's no EPA. Things are cheaper to do over there, right? One of the worst polluted rivers in the world are near the Foxconn factory right outside of the Foxconn facility. And I remember there was a Time magazine article. Many of us maybe are old enough to remember. I think I was in high school or college. This Time magazine article came out, and it showed this huge building called Foxconn. It was just a little factory. It employed like 200,000 people, and it was in a rural part of the country. And people maybe in their 20s and 30s would work there. They'd work there many, many hours, right? You could work tons of hours, and you weren't even allowed to talk on the factory floor, else you'd get fired for slowing down productivity. People were sleeping in what looked like bunk beds, but they were just sheets of plywood. People were packed like sardines into these quarters where they might sleep in between shifts. And the tough thing in that article was the story about how the Foxconn factory had to install nets everywhere, big nets around all the buildings. And it was because workers were looking for better contracts, and the contracts started to come in with injury and death benefits. Hey, if you got hurt at work or you happen to be killed as a result of something on the job, there'd be a death benefit to your family. And some people were so desperate, I guess, that that was the idea portrayed in the article, that they were willing to get a job there and kill themselves jumping off the off the building to get their hands on that death benefit. And it just pointed out one of the many wild things about what manufacturing can look like in another country. But if it's not outside your back window, you might not see it, and it might not affect you buying that product. Of course, we're all using iPhones. I use a phone. So how about after manufacturing? Once this phone's been created, it's got to head somewhere. It's got to head somewhere out to where it's going to be distributed. I'm going to draw a ship here. One of the cheapest forms of transportation, shipping things, obviously not in a little sailboat like this with oars, but a big thing. Transportation of goods is cheapest on rail systems. And when we put something big into the ocean, that we can get moving on its momentum and keep it going. So there's the shipping. And again, at each step of a product's life cycle, there's always going to be these things involved. So the shipping that occurs, and then how do people even know that the product is out there and available? Well, there's all kinds of marketing and advertising. We'll call this some M&A. M&A, marketing and advertising. And that could be happening on the internet. That could be happening in flyers, in commercials. It could be embedded as paid advertisements that are snuck into the dialogue or the script of a TV show that we watch or a movie. When there's billions of dollars at stake, then there's definitely hundreds of millions being placed into the marketing of that product. So some marketing and advertising. It's kind of a corny graphic for this. I don't really know how to represent that. Maybe just like another big old billboard somewhere. You know, we know now that all the data that's collected from us, it's not just the things that you say, but something like a chatbot technology is even scanning the transcripts of the language that of the things we say back and forth to each other in conversations, the things we type in private emails to each other, and a picture is built on a profile of you and what's going on in your life. I just heard a funny story about a guy who had an argument with his wife, and it was, they were saying goofy things back and forth to each other, but the tech that's being used to scan that information figured that guy might need some divorce lawyers, and he started to see ads for divorce lawyers. That's a little bit of a jump in technology from before, where you like go in and put an actual search in, like I'm looking for wedding rings, engagement rings, and then you happen to see ads for engagement rings. This is stuff scanning bulk data. All right, so we've got the other thing in marketing and advertising is you're always going to see the best thing. They're always going to show you the main positive that you're looking for in the commercials, and make you feel like you're less than if you don't have it. And they're going to cut all this other stuff out. Like, let's say you're in France, but you don't speak French, but you need a taxi. Don't worry, there's an app for that. Or maybe we'll see somebody for a shampoo commercial, and they've got this, and the commercial is like slow motion of somebody's hair, just beautiful hair being moving around in the camera shot. But they're probably not going to mention some of the other things that happen in shampoo, right? Or in the production here, which would be some of the research that goes into trying to understand these products. And for that, I'm going to come down here to R&D, research and development. For a cell phone, all these different stops on the product life, they're happening all around the world, a real capitalistic model. Research and development, R&D. A lot of the R&D for the phone is not taking place in Taiwan, but it's happening in Silicon Valley, right? Out in California. That's where reverse engineering is going to take place of competitors' products. That's where things are going to be tested. That's where they're going to try to create products that will fail at an exact time, so that all of a sudden your product's not working so well and your mind is primed that you're not good enough. Once as a message that's communicated through marketing and advertising, and, really strong competition is going to force companies to have to do things like that, where the timing of the planned obsolescence is going to go right in hand with when you release a new product out into the market. But yeah, nobody ever talks about shampoo and products that that you get put that, might touch your skin. But I like to use this example maybe with my high school students about how if it doesn't say on the back of a shampoo bottle, this product was not tested on animals. If it doesn't say that, then it's guaranteed that it was. And let's be honest, testing on animals is probably a lot cheaper than paying a person minimum wage to test it on them. And with shampoo, for example, this is a little bit of a tough image to think about, but they're going to take some bunnies and lab bunnies, which have white fur coats, makes it easier to see through their skin if they happen to develop a hematoma or something during testing. And they're going to cut the rabbit open and stick shampoo in there and stick it in its eyes. And it's going to be in a cage with just its head sticking out so it doesn't bounce around. Kind of graphic stuff, right? But it's something everybody needs to be aware of. If you're technologically literate, that means you understand all these aspects of the creation and production, execution of technology and consumption of technology, because as much of that as possible is going to be hidden from us so it doesn't influence our decisions to use something. Nobody wants to be using a product that they feel bad about. All right, so some research and development. And then what's going to happen after the product gets in your hands? You've got it, you're using it for a while, and what happens when you're done with that product? Another stop on the product life cycle here might be it's kind of a combination. Let's draw a trash can. We'll put some flies buzzing around here. Little pictorial verbiage using lines to suggest action, but things might end up in the trash. Maybe like at my house, we have this one big drawer that just pulls out from the cabinet that's got all the junk in it, where we save all the old cell phones, just piled up inside that drawer. Or maybe things end up in some incinerator somewhere, where they heat them up to such high temperatures that it breaks down as much of that material as possible, and then maybe things could end up being recycled. Let's do that little recycling symbol here. So we might call this whole step here reduce, reuse, recycle, upcycle, incinerate. Sometimes things are taken apart and thrown back into the production process. So here's some nice steps. We can think of any product this way. Of course, if it's a manufactured product, it's going to go all around the world as part of its life cycle, right? And so not every technology has a life cycle like this, but many of the consumer products that people rely on day to day make stops like this around the world. So we've got our 7 areas of the human design world. You will probably not see these named in standard 8.2, but we will see things like benefits and trade-offs, the inputs of technology, the outcomes of technology on society. If I can move this out of the way here now, let's cover some of these other concepts and wrap this up. Society itself is the ultimate demographic. That's everybody together participating. And, this stuff's important because I'm going to put next to this one here, the 4 outcomes of technology, the 4 outcomes. Here's where this becomes important. In the design process, we don't want kids to be, at the point where they're developing their different ideas and they finally go to pick their best idea, pick your best solution. You want to have students pick it with some written rationale. Why is this the best solution as compared and contrasted to the other solutions or iterations that you had in mind already, right? And when they say it's the best, why is it the best? It's the best because it has the least amount of negatives or trade-offs, or it will have the greatest benefits or the ability to meet the requirements on the design brief. But we also want students to think beyond just that first person user in the short term, and we want them to think about different layers and aspects of society. In a really good engineering problem on a design brief, there's going to be conflicting demographics or demographics that may have some shared, but also some different needs and wants. And if you create something that's going to be really good for one aspect of society, another aspect of society will think that's a trade-off. And so it would be really tough to say there's a perfect solution, but we want students to have a rich vocabulary and set of concepts, and from this taxonomy that they can use to argue and present a rationale for why they're picking a certain solution. And so we want them to think about different aspects of society, whether it's government or health or the economy, or it's the environment. And this list could go on and on and on, different subcategories of society. And the outcomes, the 4 outcomes of tech, it's not just benefit and trade-off. All right, we're going to put here, let's see, let's think of a little scenario where I can tease out 4 outcomes. And by the way, these are simultaneous. Benefits and trade-offs will happen at the same time, but these 4 will happen at the same time. Let's say I bought some type of product, and because I had some bug or pest in my backyard, and I had to get rid of this pest. So I go to the store and I just see the front label. It says this product gets rid of this pest, and I'm like, great. On the front of the box, they show me the benefit of this that is going to solve my problem. And so I buy this product, I take it home, and I just read a little bit of the instructions on the back, and it says, hey, this product is going to kill off this bug that you don't want to have. Awesome. That's the desirable outcome, and the intended outcome, desirable and intended. It's going to kill off that bug that I don't want anymore. It does say, though, that if I put this, if I spray this stuff down on my grass, that nobody can be on the grass for 24 hours because it's not going to be safe for people. And I say, okay, well, it's nice that they tell me that. It's an undesirable outcome. I wish my kids could play outside, but they're not going to be able to for 24 hours. So that's undesirable, but it is intended because they told me about it on the box. It is intended. And if you look at these desirable, intended, undesirable, intended, what would these other 2 categories be? It means there must be something that is undesirable, but also unintended. And there's going to be things that are desirable, but unintended. So what could those 2 things be? Well, yeah, my kids can't play in the backyard for 24 hours, but hey, my neighbor's kids, they also can't come over and play in the backyard for the next 24 hours. And just don't tell anybody, but I can't stand my neighbor's kids. Guess what? That's a great thing for me. So it's desirable for me if they can't come over and play for 24 hours. And I didn't realize that was going to be the case. So it was an unintended but desirable consequence. This is the tough one. This is the one that you hope nobody could figure this out until after the product's been deployed. Many times we find out 30 years later that a company knew about something that was bad and didn't tell anybody. Let's say Johnson & Johnson and a few people in that company having knowing and holding on to that proprietary information they had from their R&D that this was going to cause some type of ovarian cancer in women. It's like, oh man, you really hope that the company wouldn't have any of this stuff that they knew ahead of time and kept under wraps. But let's say it didn't say it anywhere on the box, but I found out later that if it were to rain after I put this certain pesticide down, that if there were bodies of water nearby, like a koi pond, I don't have a koi pond, but let's just say I did, that it could kill the fish. Well, that would have been undesirable and unintended, right? And so when we want kids to think about which technology or which solution I came up with is the best, or how do I talk about how I think my solution is going to perform? Can I hypothesize how I think my solution is going to perform before the testing step? I want them thinking about things in all 4 of these categories, right? And so you're going to see stuff like this in standard 8.2. We're going to see stuff in there about the impact of a technology on society and layers of society here as well. And then the very last concept I'm going to cover is going to be this J curve of technology. The J curve. What is that? Well, let's make a timeline up here. All right. And I don't know if this is the true timeline here, but when it comes to a communication technology like writing things back and forth, we might imagine that if there was some timeline here of human history over the last 6,000 years, that somewhere back here when the pyramids were in existence, or were first created. You know, there were people writing maybe on papyrus, you know, on River Nile reed paper. Because let's face it, writing on cave walls for who knows how long before that was really cumbersome, and you couldn't take stuff with you. It's like the Flintstones carrying around a big wooden tablet. Maybe some of those cuneiform tablets, you know, those cuneiform tablets were being used for a long period of time, let's say for thousands and thousands of years. And then all of a sudden, papyrus pops up, River Nile reed paper. And now we've got this lighter weight thing that can be used to um, to as an innovation for written communication systems, right? And so if this period of time was thousands of years, and then when papyrus hits the scene, we're using papyrus for maybe just 1,000 years, right? And so this got a lot shorter. And then papyrus works for so long, but people get tired of going out and having to pull a feather out of a duck or a turkey to be able to dip it in some ink and write. Then we come up with the next technological innovation, which might be the writing with charcoal or a pencil, something that had actual lead in it, you know, a lead pencil. And that innovation didn't take thousands of years, just 1,000. That just happened within a few hundred years after papyrus. And then after that innovation, next thing you know, we've got mechanical pencils and pens come on the scene. And the point is that the amount of time between each previous major breakthrough in the innovation of a particular technology gets smaller and smaller, and it's not at an even rate. Gosh, I feel a little embarrassed by this here. On a timeline, if one innovation took this long, and the next one took half that amount of time, and the next one took half that amount of time, and the next one took even half of that, and half of that, and half of that, right? We're looking at this exponential increase in the rate of technological innovation, an exponential increase in the rate of technological innovation. And so an exponential increase on a graph might look something like this, where we have the rate of time at the bottom of the graph, the rate of time, and this might be the rate of change. Let's put a delta for change. And so as time goes along, the rate of change gets steeper and steeper and steeper. And they call this curve right here, the J curve, the J curve. So as time goes by, the amount of time between each new technological innovation or breakthrough happens exponentially. And people make all kinds of analogies to this besides looking at something like the writing implements, but you know, the airplane was invented, and within 100 years that airplane invented, a version of an airplane was being used to drop a hydrogen bomb on a country, right, or an atomic weapon. And wow, what a small amount of time for that to take place as compared to human history going back thousands of years. And the last little caveat to this would be, let's say, the singularity, where technology just can't increase at any faster rate or get any faster, any smaller, any better. And we reach this singularity. All right. So I think I covered the main concepts that I wanted to, that I set out from the beginning. And I thank you for sitting with me through this. The idea is that you could reproduce this type of a lesson yourself in front of a whiteboard with students using your own examples, your own way. But it's a nice way to round off an intro to design thinking unit, because we cover all of these important concepts and definitions for students. And then we're going to try to hold them accountable to use this type of stuff in the deliverables, or the different writing, drawing, whatever prompts you want to call them at each step of the design process, as students prove their work throughout the design loop. Okay. So thank you again so much for your time today. I appreciate you. Googly moogly, it's gorgeous outside, and I look forward to the next time I see everybody. Take care.